moving from TV to gaming and gaming to TV is not a seamless process. If a brand isn't on these spaces, well, you're not on. It'd be unthinkable not to be on Facebook. It'd be unthinkable not to be on TikTok now.
Welcome back to Brands in Play, your podcast for everything immersive marketing. I'm Nick Hill, co-founder and chief innovation officer at Sawhorse.
And I'm Albane, Prioux, strategic marketing consultant. This week on the show, we have brands making their own anime. Netflix is launching a party games mode. We also have Meta smart glasses that are becoming tour guides, and the entertainment content is at the forefront of marketing campaigns.
And for our real-time review, I'm taking you to the Gabby's Dollhouse immersive experience at camp.
And later we'll be sitting down with James Reevell, experts in new media and gaming, to find out more about how broadcast but also wider brands can leverage those new media.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the show. Let's get into it. Albane, what's up?
I mean, I need to ask you. I can see that you were complaining last week that you couldn't get them, and here they are on your face. For those that are not watching on video, Nick is rocking the new Meta Ray-Bans. So are these the display one?
Yes, these are the Meta Ray-Ban displays. After my long, crazy rant last week about how messed up Meta's rollout was, I was actually able to get them a week later. So they sold out on the first batch, and then I was on the waiting list. They called me like 3 days later, and then I just went in store and picked them up.
Typical Gen Z, almost, of you, like to be so impatient. But do you know what? What's really, I've had a chance to try them out at Meta Connect, but I don't feel like they're that bulky. The only thing that like made me realize that you had new glasses because they're a bit darker than the original one, but they're not bulky. They're not like, this is really impressive when you think about the amount of computer that is on those glasses now.
Yeah, it's pretty unreal. They are not bulky. They're almost the same size as the last glasses. They're just a little bit thicker, and there's no like added weight. They weigh almost the same.
Yeah.
So it is pretty unreal. And so the big difference about these glasses is they have the display. So in the right eye, there's a little screen that pops up, and then you also have your wristband, and you control the UI by doing different hand movements, and the wristband reads those movements and then sends it to the glasses. So I've been experimenting it with them for like the past week or so and trying to like get in the habit of using them every day.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been fantastic. Like I'm really happy with them. I wish you could do more, but I'm still learning about them
Yeah,
every day.
and I think the point of Meta Connect is that more developers are going to create app. Right now, it's like the Meta own app, or it's like special partnership with Spotify and others. But I'm sure once you have Google also integrated on there, and like Google Maps, for example, like there's going to be a lot that
It's
is really
gonna
cool. I don't.
expand. It's like
Yeah,
those early days of the iPhone. Remember when it
exactly.
first came out and they
Not
opened up
every
the
app.
SDK and
Yeah,
people were like, "I made the Snake game." And it's like super lo-fi. It's like nobody wants it. I remember one app was the flashlight, and I was like, "Wow, someone's selling the
yes.
flashlight for
You had
99
you had
cents."
enough, and it was the screen. It wasn't the cap. It
Right.
wasn't the flash. It was your screen. Was the flashlight.
It takes time to
Oh,
expand it, but I mean, it's
good
just the early
times.
days.
But what
But I
great
can
time.
definitely recommend them. But we got a lot to get to,
We do.
so let's jump to the news.
What do you have first? What is your first story?
My first story is all about how brands are making their own anime. Japanese animation is so popular amongst younger generations. Brands realize this and they're
Mm-mm.
starting to make their own versions of it. So this week in the news, I saw that not only Duolingo, but also Gap moved forward with their own animes and released them. So did you see these?
I didn't see Gab, but I saw Duolingo, and actually that is, spoiler alert, but my hit for this week, and I can deep dive into it a little bit more. But
Oh,
this
damn.
is
Well, I'll try to leave some space for you. But essentially, what Duolingo did is they came out with an anime miniseries, 5 60-second episodes, and I think it's because the CMO had mentioned that they came out with some anime focused social posts, and those posts got so much
yes.
engagement that they decided to lean into it, and they're like, well, let's just make our own anime. And what's really cool is that the show is all in Japanese, It's got subtitles with like almost every other language. And the story is all about like expanding the lore of Duo the owl and his
Yes.
friends,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
like this insane owl character. If you're not like tracking all the content that Duolingo makes, it's pretty fantastic how he's a bizarre, larger than life owl.
Yes. And I think Duolingo has always been one of these brands that I think is a reference when you're thinking about like cultural relevancy with Gen Z and even now Gen A. They were one of the first ones to be on Roblox. They also like their social media is like one of the few brands that I love actually look like generally engaging with their Instagram because it's just generally like really funny and they just know what is culturally relevant and they're very fast
And they
at
take risks, you know, it's
the
like they
take
have some
risks and
edgy type
very
of immersive, interactive,
yes.
and leading social content, which is like pretty impressive.
Yes, and they just know what is part of like conversation. So, they're just very quick at turning around content. So it doesn't surprise me that they're doing. I think what's interesting is that they're doing a long form, like an anime is probably like I don't know how long the episodes are going to be, but that
Well,
is something.
they're only a minute long each,
Ah,
and
okay.
there's 5 of them, but it's like a little series, you know? And what's cool is they partnered with Titmouse, the animation studio, and they're the same company that did Big Mouth. So it's like real pro animators behind this. So one thing I really love about this is how this anime is actually not only is going to be worked into the Duolingo app, but it's also going to be on the brand's YouTube channel. So it's sort of like spreading it across all the different touch points. And I think one of the reasons why this really works is that one of the reasons why fans and people want to learn Japanese is because they watch animes.
Yeah.
So, you know, as Duolingo, as a language company, it makes so much sense. A language learning company, it would make so much sense to like do this sort of direction.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Total sense. Love it.
And
Love to see it.
yeah, and then the other big one that came out this week was Gap. They made their own animated film, anime style, and this was to promote the new limited edition Gap and Sandy Lang collection. And basically, it's Sandy Lang's like personal experience growing up in New York, and it's all about her magical closet and sort of her ideas about fashion. And it's just such a cool kind of vibe because it's really leaning into nostalgia of that old school anime look. It's very lo-fi, no Gen AI was used, and it's just a way to like connect with younger audiences and also older audiences that like understand that anime, that look and that vibe.
Mhm.
And I think this is kind of surprising for Gap because, you know, traditionally they've done so much, choreographed dance, in their marketing, and same with like celebrity ambassadors. It's kind of what they've done for like a long time. This is the first time that they've done like an animated, like anime style film.
But I feel like they're back again. They're like their
Gap
recent
is
campaign.
back.
Gap is back. Which is really exciting because I love the brand, but for a really long time, I felt like they were just a bit out of touch, I think, with what was culturally relevant. And I think their latest campaign, we talked about it, I think, in one of our last like hit miss. But they're just on a good track right now to understand like what do they consumer or like younger generation, what kind of content they like to do. So I haven't seen it. I'm really excited to actually like is it out yet? The Gap.
It's out. It
Okay.
looks really cool. You should check it out. Both of them. The anime styles are on point. Like if
Okay.
you're not paying attention, they look like straight up like authentic Japanese animated
That's cool.
content, but it's created by these brands. So great work to both of them. What do you got on your next story?
So next one is a small piece, but wanted to highlight it because we talked about Netflix last week, how they are now, reinvesting into, well, what we guess is reinvesting into creating their own game when they fired and remove all of the branch that was essentially their gaming studio where they were going to create their own game. It sounds like this is now back. And this week, they also, like early last week, sorry, they also released a new party mode game. What that essentially allows you to do is we're not at a point where you can play with other people and like that are outside of your household. What that allows you to do is essentially play some of the games that they have on your TV and your phone is the controller and you can play with family members, friends that are also like sitting next to you. So they are leaning a little bit more like I think they're leaning into like the no social elements. It would just made me question what was the intent here and whether they're more looking at taking market share from like the Xbox, the PlayStation, where maybe tomorrow people are gonna discover like bigger games, and maybe they'll do like, I don't know, a big partnership with Steam that allows them to have more games onto their platform that people can then, it's part of like a package, a bit like what Xbox is doing. They give a bit of mixed signals around what was the future of gaming on their platform, and it sounds like they're doubling down. In the most two weeks, we've seen a lot happening on their side. So we'll keep a close eye on Netflix and what does that mean as well for brands in the future. For now, it's still early days on the opportunities, but really interested to see.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was really interesting, and I'm excited to see it. I think it's really positioning Netflix as an entertainment platform and not just a
But
video streaming service. The question is like, do you think the Netflix audience is going to want to play games? Because right now they're going to Netflix to watch all their series. So
yeah,
that's like a behavioral shift. So I'm
I
really curious to see if it gets picked up and what the usage looks like.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has to do with the games. It's because you have like Netflix Kids, and I just wonder if maybe that's the approach that they have to take. Is like, what are the kind of games that we can already like young users? They don't know us for like. I feel like you and I know the history of Netflix, and we have a certain way of engaging with it, so it might be hard to convince us. But it's more like that younger generation that just like starting to engage through their parents' account, and
That's a
then
good point.
getting them used to actually, they might do a partnership with Bluey, who knows? And I think we'll talk about it with James on like the how those broadcasters are going to think about IP licensing, and maybe they'll be able at some point to have like a really kid focused IP that has a series of its own, but then you can only access the game, and it's a simple game that a young audience can play with initially, because like they're not at a stage where they're not right now going to compete with Xbox or PlayStation. Like the games that you have on Netflix are very simple, very low lift. Like the gameplay is like the control is not to the level that you would expect of like a proper console game or a PC game. So it's very low lift mobile games, but it might change in the future.
Yeah, I mean, let's see how people pick it up. I mean, I do think it's interesting. Like, what about those younger users that are discovering Netflix for the first time as a place to play games, and then it expands their understanding to be like, oh, now I can watch stuff here too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. It's a whole
maybe
platform.
that's an area where growth can come from.
Yeah, 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 for sure. What do you have next?
For my next story, it's all about how the Meta Ray-Bans are becoming Disney tour guides. So Disney Imagineers are testing early prototypes of virtual assistants at Disneyland using Meta Ray-Bans smart glasses. And essentially, this is leveraging Meta's SDK. So we talked about it a little bit earlier on the show, but different developers are going to be able to create their own apps and roll them out via the glasses. So the Disney team is doing this, and essentially this is like guided tours for fans and people who are at the parks to get a better and more enhanced experience while they're there. And I just wanted to play this clip from the video so we can kind of get some use cases. And I wanted to get your point of view on this, Albane. But let's play that clip.
What's that? How can I ride it?
That's the Mark Twain Riverboat, a classic Disneyland paddle boat. It's nearby and you can board for a relaxing 14-minute cruise.
Where can I get a gluten-free snack?
Tropical Imports, right by you in Frontierland, has fresh fruit, cuties mandarins, and other gluten-free snacks. Want to check the menu?
Where can I get one of those?
You can get that poured keychain nearby at the creature stall here in Galaxy's Edge.
What's this ride? And is it appropriate for my 4-year-old?
This is Finding Nemo's Submarine Voyage. It's gentle, family-friendly, and perfect for young kids, including your 4-year-old. Hey, Beta, Pirates of the Caribbean currently has a short wait time. Want directions?
Yeah, that sounds great. How do I get there?
Once you get to New Orleans Square, Pirates of the Caribbean will be just ahead on your right.
Okay.
Hey, Beta, Winnie the Pooh is nearby. Would you like to meet him?
Yeah. Can you tell me how to get there?
So, Albane, were you familiar with this rollout, and what are your thoughts?
It's all fresh reaction. When you first mentioned the story, I was like, why would you need a tour guide of Disney? Like I have like this memory of like the map, and like, it was like such a beautiful like piece and part of like the experience. But seeing the use case, I just find incredible. I find it so interesting, and how, you know, like obviously like I can only imagine like the amount of information and processes to be able to like, see the keychain and know that you can buy it at this shop. Like this is a level of data I can't even process. Like how, like what was the like yeah, the process to be able to train an AI on like knowing where to go and what to do. But I can only imagine like what would that look like if you start doing a partnership with a museum or with just a whole city. This is really cool. Like a very interesting use case that I think is going to give a lot of idea to different businesses.
Yeah. And I think that, like Disney is so big that they're going to be able to be a first mover here. And to your point, I think a lot of businesses are going to leverage this. I think Disney and these larger companies will be those first big use cases. And I think one thing I love about this conceptually is like enhancing the user experience for when they're there. And right now we're getting an audio layer that's supporting our experience. I'm really looking forward to getting like a visual layer. Can you imagine like what they could do with all the Disney IP and all of like the geolocators and the different interactivity you could do with IP, and kind of making the lore and the park come to life in ways that it like can't currently. And that
Yeah.
to me is very exciting.
No, I agree. And I wonder if there's going to be like a sharing of information, because I think there's a few pain points that you have when you're at Disney, which is like, when does the parade start? So like just planning your day can be a little bit, if you have kids, I can only imagine that it can be quite overwhelming if you want to make sure that they see everything and you don't miss out on everything. So I just can imagine that they like plan your day, you tell them what you want, and they can tell you where to navigate in the park so that you don't, it becomes an experience that's a little bit more smooth.
I
And
think
also
this is going to be successful technology because this is something that people actually want and
yes.
it's additive to their lives. This is
Yeah, I agree.
not like this, shiny object that people want to like talk about for 5 minutes and then put in their pocket.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
people will be using this stuff. So it's
Yeah,
cool.
I'm excited. Just for that, I just really want to get the classes. I was really excited to see like what are the new ways that we'll be able to engage with like real world, which I think every tech that we've seen recently has always been like through your phone, through like VR, etc. And I think what Meta is doing is, what Mark Zuckerberg was saying is like, we really want people to be able to experience just more real life experiences, but a little bit enhanced with these glasses. So a great use case that I hadn't seen. So really excited. Thank you for sharing that story.
100. What's next?
Last one. So it's on the back of, we mentioned that we had a bit of FOMO last week, not to be at Adweek in New York, but I did look a little bit at like what were the top panels discussions, and one that kept being brought up is one with CMO of Hilton, Bose, H&R Block, and EOS products, where they were talking a little bit about the mistakes that brands are making when they are trying to engage with Gen Z. And one thing that came up quite a lot is debunking the myth around Gen Z's not. I think when you think about Gen Z, there's a lot of article that are saying, oh, they hate advertising, they're like really anti-advertising, and they're not brand loyal. And these brands, and not something that I would agree actually. And I think these brands actually debunk those myths, where they were saying actually we've seen movement of them being really loyal to brands. They are engaging with a lot of branded content. It's just different kind of content that we might be used to. And one of the quote that I wanted to highlight for this particular story was the CMO of Bose saying that at the moment it really reshifted the way that traditionally you had a TV campaign, and then you had content that was just, I guess, to amplify this main campaign that usually would be brought on TV and at home, etc. They completely shifted that, where they're now thinking a lot less about advertising, and 90% of their budget now and effort is going towards just content, whether that is social, whether that is entertaining, or something that's going to be actually on virtual environment. That really shifted the way that they are thinking about their marketing calendar, to say, where it's no longer led by big pillar TV campaigns, and actually more, because we know that audiences are fragmented and on many different platforms consuming different kind of media of content. They are thinking more now on like sub communities and small communities, and creating more content than actually this one campaign. And it goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about, where we're going to see more and more brands, especially with AI, creating content that are a lot more tailored to like really niche communities, but at least that is customized, tailored to that specific audience that you're trying to speak to, as opposed to another note that was discussed on this panel, where it's now incredibly hard for brands to do a global campaign where you can have this global reach, because not one person is on the same platform than we used to have before. So now like the game has shifted a little bit, and I just love that. And it was more about Gen Zs are not anti brands or anti like brand loyalty. They just want to consume a different kind of content that has to make sense to the platform that they're consuming into.
Yeah, 100. I was really glad to see that panel because it kind of validates our entire podcast, which is, immersive marketing. And I feel like so many marketing teams, so many brands are taking a different perspective. Like the old school perspective was let's make our big commercials and let's just get them out. And now it's really about like creating conversations. And it's also about creating entertainment. It's like taking campaigns and like permeating them and making them and those ideas relevant to everybody's lives and additive. So we're seeing so much more of it, and I love it.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I think it can feel a little bit daunting because you're like, oh my god, I have to create so many different variation of content for all of these platforms. But again, that's part of like that's why it was intertwined to like AI and how that could be utilized to it. Is like how you can leverage AI as a way to be able to translate some of those pieces of content to the platform that it is relevant to. So I would recommend, if you haven't seen the replay, it was a really great panel, so would recommend it. But on to real time review. What did you get up to? I think like you have actually a real life experience for us
Yeah,
this
well,
week.
speaking of like taking brands and marketing and like making it immersive, I have some firsthand experience because I went to the Gabby Dollhouse experience at camp. So let's go to that real time review. All right, so this week I went to the Gabby Dollhouse experience at camp. And first of all, Albane, are you familiar with Gabby's Dollhouse?
I was gonna ask you, I don't know who Gabby is. Who's
Okay,
Gabby?
that's messed up. Clearly, you don't have kids. So I do, and I know all about Gabby's Dollhouse. I've watched a lot of it. Essentially, it's an interactive television series on Netflix, combination between live action and animation. And it's not bad. It's definitely for a younger audience.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so popular, in fact, that Universal just released a movie about Gabby, and I think it's internationally playing in theaters right now.
Okay.
The backstory essentially is Gabby is this girl, and she has this dollhouse in her room, and then she's able to shrink herself down to like micro size, go into the doll room, go into the dollhouse, and then all her friends there are cats, and there are
Oh
all these
wait.
different cat characters, and it's a pretty clever show. I watch it with my kids, like I said, and we have a nickname for it. We call it Gabby's Freaky Cat House instead of because I think that makes more sense. Camp, are you familiar with what camp is?
I mean, the like. I
Well, not
mean,
not the concept of camp. There's a company in the US called Camp.
oh, then no, I'm familiar with the concept of camp. I'm not familiar with the.
Okay, well, there's a real place in the US. There's a company. It's called Camp, and essentially, it's these unique shop play hybrid experiences
Oh, okay.
in physical locations all across the US. So there's 9 of them, and I went to the one in Los Angeles. And basically, it's cool because there's a store in the front, and then in the back, there's this huge area that's basically like rotating themes that are interactive, sort of playable, immersive experiences.
Okay.
And in the past, they've done it with Bluey. I went to that one, Nike, Paw Patrol, all kinds of different IPs. And the company is really selling it as a blend of play and product.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's a good a way for kids to go go one layer deeper with the IP that they love. So this one was all about Gabby's. I went there with my kids. Obviously, I'm not the target demo, so you gotta take my feedback with a grain of salt. I think it's really designed for like 3 to 10 year olds. And so when you first get in, like it's like a normal shop. So everyone's just standing around like shopping goods. There's all kinds of different products and toys and stuff to look at. But you can buy a ticket and you can go with a small group and you sort of get gathered to one side of the store. And then there's a guide that essentially is interacting with all the kids, saying you got to do some sort of movement or some sort of sound, and then something crazy is going to happen. And when the kids do it, the door, like the whole wall, like shifts over, and it reveals like this new like secret place for
Oh, this is
the
fun.
kids to go. So everyone like crams into that space. And then we learn about Gabby. She's taking over the space, and she's essentially requesting everyone's help because she wants to throw this big party, and she needs everyone's help to like get all the elements together so that they can pull this party off. And then this is the first moment of like interactivity, sort of immersiveness. Um, they are projecting on the doorway the dollhouse, and then the dollhouse is like a video projection, and then
Okay.
it zooms in, and that creates the effect of everyone shrinking down to go
That's
inside the
fun.
dollhouse. Then a door opens, you go inside, and then you get into this kitchen. And what's great is there's a kind of a guide, a human that's kind of walking you through what to do. And he creates a challenge that we need to make this cake, but I need elements. So he's sending all the kids to different parts of the room to gather all the different ingredients that they need. They don't make a real cake; it's just plastic pieces. They put them together.
Kind
They
of
make
escape
the
the
cake.
room but for kids, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like super interactive. The kids get really, really serious about it. They want to make sure they can pull this off. And then there's a moment of like arts and crafts. So all the kids are like coloring, in these little papers that they give them, and then they collect them. And then there's like it just keeps going. You're like on this little journey. So then you go into the next room, and it's like a play garden. So this has like more physical stuff. So you can run around, you can go down the slides, you can bike around on these trikes, so you can get some like energy out. And then once you're done that, they send you to another room. And this is sort of like a lo-fi science experiment situation where the guide like just combines some different elements, and then it creates like this balloon that like blows, like kind of like it doesn't explode, but it fills up. There's another area that's like another secret room they can go in where they can jump in ball pits, and there's like some simple lo-fi lighting effects that are interesting. And then in the last room, everyone lines up. This is the party room. So you have DJ Catnip on the ones and twos. And then you've got the hype moment because Gabby's going to come out. So everyone's super excited. Then Gabby comes out in this big like suit. So she's like,
Oh,
she
it's
kind of looks
like
like the animated character.
okay.
And then everyone has an opportunity to get a photo with her.
Oh, cute.
So
That's so
yeah, so it's like the kids really like bug out because they want to get those photos, and you get to take the photo home, which is cool. And so my review essentially is the good. Like I think the human actors are fantastic. They really engage with kids. Then that's needed for this to be successful.
yeah.
Also, this is adventure for kids and discovery. So it's like they don't know what they don't know. So as they keep going through, it's like really kind of fun and engaging for them to experience that stuff. Um, and then I really like how interactive it is. Like they very much are asked to do things. It's not like they're just randomly
Passively
walking
looking at
through
something.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's engaging. The bad is, it's a physical location, and they can only take so many people. So normally you have to buy your ticket in advance, and you got to do a lot of planning, and there's a limit of how many people they can get through that thing. So I think that's a bottleneck. Um, and then, my big critique about this is like I just don't think that camp is pushing immersion enough. I don't think they're leveraging new technologies. There's really no wow moments. And I,
Mm,
I think that like I know I'm not the target audience, but I really wish they would use some sort of like visual tricks, visual effects,
yes.
something where it's like everyone in the room is like, whoa. And I feel like there's so many opportunities to do that, but I didn't. I just don't see it, and I didn't see it when I went to the Bluey one.
I
A
believe in.
year back. So yeah, in general, like I think it's great. I think kids love it. It's definitely immersive, experiential, which we talk about in the show and we like. Um, and I'm in support. But my big takeaway is like, I just want to see him do more. Like
It
I want to
wasn't.
be loud.
I think for a 10-year-old, this is innovative.
No.
But it hasn't met your expectation of someone that works in tech and immersive tech is like doesn't hit the mark. But it sounds really exciting. And I think it's like it's something really cute as well. As you said, it's like another way for the kids to experience the IP in another form. And I'm sure that is like souvenirs that they will always have compared to like playing a game at some point. Like we can't really beat those kind of like social moments as well. And the fact that you're there with your parents, like this is really cool.
Yeah, definitely cool. Next time you're in the States, you should check it out.
Protect the Gabby's house. But that is it for the real time review. Thank you so much, Nick, for going RL to give us an insight on this. Now we're actually going to jump into a conversation with James where we can speak about a bit more on actually IP and how broadcasters are using exactly those different touch points to be able to bring more immersiveness around some of the IP. So let's go into the interview.
Let's go. James Reevell is an expert in new media and gaming. His background is in executive producing and journalism with a focus on creating factual content and youth-driven entertainment. He was previously the executive editor for youth audiences at the BBC, where he led innovative projects across broadcast, social, and immersive gaming platforms. And he just recently left the BBC to start his own consultancy. We're excited to have him on the show. James, welcome.
Thanks, Nick. It's great to be here.
Great to have you.
Let's start a little bit with your background. I'd love to, I mean, you kind of came from the traditional space and then you moved right into all these emergent, like interactive platforms. What was that transition like?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a very unique career where I think I've been lucky that it's been defined by being able to work at sort of the forefront of new media and sort of, starting off with sort of the social digital revolution. I remember vividly us all sort of taking our cameras up to try and make vertical video and sort of working with like, all the biggest social media companies and moving forward now later on to joining, working at the BBC and, getting to work on projects like gaming, which has become such a huge part of it about 4 years ago. Became like a real sort of focus for us when we started to see changes in audiences. So it's always about sort of new types of storytelling, being at the cutting edge. But also, I think what's really exciting is like we've always been able to sort of in these new platforms sort of play at scale. Like you start to get really big audiences now, which is super exciting.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I guess I want to jump straight into the view of the topic, which is I want to understand a little bit the why behind the BBC because it was quite interesting all of the moves that you've done on Roblox and Fortnite. I can imagine that there were some data that allowed or at least indicated on why you had to be into this space. So I wonder if you could give us a bit more insights on what was, I guess, the landscape then that made you make the jump towards those virtual platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of a confluence of things coming together. So, the first thing is that we think of ourselves the BBC thinks of itself as a broadcast company, and it very much is. It has a huge penetration in the UK, which is sort of plus 80% of the UK population every week. But equally, it is like a company that's always been sort of quite big on innovation, like it invented radio, invented color
Yeah.
TV. So it's also a place that's sort of quite outward looking and thinking about, well, where is the next thing? And how can we always sort of serve our audiences better?
Mhm.
So we saw, I think everyone's seeing this, like, the decline in broadcast TV. Obviously, SVOD platforms such as BBC iPlayer are sort of catching that up. But we're also seeing like quite big audience changes here that we're seeing to younger audiences migrating from linear TV and really long form video. So we're seeing sort of less audience, still big audiences, but we're certainly seeing it as a new generation, Gen Alpha, who some of them are just like, they're just not into TV. They are, and that's not just like not into the BBC, but not into our competitors. They prefer to spend their time gaming and actually, on social media.
Yeah, I agree. It's the sheer volume essentially of time that they're spending into this platform as well that made the move.
That is where kids hang out together. So it's not just about people spending time alone on these platforms. Actually, Roblox and Fortnite are social media platforms in their own right. So they are kind of
Mhm.
essential parts of people's lives. So to my mind, if a brand isn't on these spaces, well, you're not on, it'd be unthinkable not to be on Facebook. It'd be unthinkable not to be on
Yeah.
TikTok now. So to me, these spaces are kind of becoming analogous that you need to be essentially to be in these spaces.
What were some of like the biggest, what were some of the biggest challenges or learnings you gained from activating in these new spaces?
I mean, going back to what we just said, the biggest challenges I think is the fact that they are game platforms and social media platforms. And yeah, we were very lucky at the BBC that we have like a rich history in gaming. There's lots of kids games that have been made previously by children's. And then we also have like a really strong social media background. And so the challenge kind of like how do you combine those two together? Those are two worlds colliding, so you kind of have to bring sort of the mindset of YouTube, but also the ability to make a great game flow to it. And that was like a really big learning curve and quite a big challenge. I think we've seen that with sort of the experiences we had, like we have a perpetual experience, Immersive Wonder Chase, which we started about 2 years ago, now about a year and a half ago. And that's sort of run by, Heritage America Stewart is amazing, and our controller, Fiona Campbell, was amazing at that as well. And that was a space that's really evolved. Like it's had to be updated and changed and changed and changed. So the game loop gets stronger and stronger, and also sort of reflected changes in the Roblox algorithm. So it kind of
Mhm.
feels really sticky for users. So trying to understand that is really difficult, especially when you're a brand sat away from that. Like, we don't know how the Roblox algorithm works. We hope we do, but we're still sort of making educated guesses. So that's a real challenge, I think.
Yeah, it really is the same jump as when brands started to go into social. It almost like it's a new language, new formats, new audiences as well to engage with. I'm curious to understand, I guess, where does Roblox fit, like as part of your marketing strategy? Is it something that's really separated as a standalone? Is it integrated within your marketing mix? Like how did that balance work out on your end?
The experiences that I worked on the BBC were they were about sort of reaching audience of new brands and promoting programming, but also they were sort of fundamentally about having a presence in those spaces. And
Mhm.
so the great thing about launching things like Wonder Chase is it gives you a permanent experience. So you can just drop brands into it and you can kind of pick and choose the right brands to put into it. I think that's one thing we've learned along the way is actually how can we pick the right brand to go into these spaces? 'Cause it's quite tempting to just shove brands in, but actually it's not the right brand and it's not going to fly. So yeah, and the other big thing I think is we sort of there's some really looking at opportunities where we could sort of take brands that felt they could naturally extend, and there were opportunities for that. So taking the rap game, which is sort of like a UK Razzie rap show, it's amazing, and sort of saying, well, could we hold the first ever rap clash in Fortnite with that? And that felt like a really nice project to work on because actually it allowed you to expand the world for the fans of the show because we took previous contestants and sort of mocap them and they sort of battled as they all fought each other. Like that was done by Hazimation, who are an awesome production company. And then we also kind of like you're giving more to the fans, but you're also kind of broadening out to the audience so someone on Fortnite can enjoy it too. So it's kind of still quite ad hoc, and I think there's lots of experiments also around, I think influencer marketing remains kind of like, well, influencer creator marketing, like, integrations remains sort of a really exciting, interesting space. I
Yeah.
expect the BBC will maybe do more. I can't say. I don't work there anymore.
Curious to get your point of view about the future of IP storytelling, because you look at brands like Netflix, who are now creating tons of their own games. They're also creating tons of their own shows. Where do you see these sort of like big media companies going? Like, will they make both? Will it merge into something, or will it stay with traditional linear? Or what's your perspective on that?
I remain totally convinced that in the next 5 years, we will see a really major animation IP that is born on Roblox. Like, I think it's the absolute natural home for IP generation. You can real time test it with users. You can get that
Mhm.
feedback from kids and discover if it's great. Um, I think what will be interesting is I suspect the way that will happen is we'll see something that is sort of grown on Roblox and it's spotted as like this is kind of this has great characters, this is a great world. And I think there'll be a few attempts at that. And the challenge will actually be how do we fit a great story line into it? Because I think one thing we've done, realized when we've worked in experiments in this space is that moving from TV to gaming and gaming to TV is not a seamless process. We talk about The Last of Us a lot. That's great, but that was actually the movie already. So, it's kind of like the exception that proves the rule. You have this amazing storyline at the time. So I think that's kind of where we're headed, is that we'll start to see people come to license it, and then it will be kind of like, well, can they turn it into a great show? I also think we're just going to see more and more that when you commission a TV show, you all expect it to have a game attached to it. When you commission a movie, it will become a key part of it. And I think what will happen is as you start to attach more of this kind of initial marketing promo plays, that people will start to see opportunities where they can go a bit further. One thing we thought a lot about is once we had uh, once you kind of built these spaces and brands have experience to feel comfortable in them, it kind of really opens the doors to a lot more stuff. Like, doing things like in Wonder Chase, we held the world's first election in Roblox, we believe it's the
Yes.
first, and I'll keep saying it is. But, you know, by having that space and that experience that you'd sort of take a further risk and take a further step forward. So I think that's kind of the world we're headed in. I'm curious, what do you think, Nick? You're sort of like thinking a lot about this too.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, they're definitely different lanes. It's I love to think about this concept of blurring those lines and is it a game or is it a film or is it something in between? I do feel like audiences have certain expectations and they want to do what they know. So a lot of people they want to sit down and they just want to, watch something linear and not interact with it. And then conversely, you've got gamers that have high expectations that they want to jump into a game and have full control. They don't want to even watch a cutscene at all. So,
Mhm.
I think it's good to talk about this stuff, but it all will come down to the audience and what they actually are expecting. But I love to see these type of projects, and I love to see creatives challenging audiences to get them out of their comfort zone. And I think that's how you grow in this space. I do think that
Mhm.
younger generations are growing up with interactivity natively. They don't even think about it. You see, like, basically babies holding iPads that are controlling, they're having some sort of influence on the media that they're consuming. So I do think, I don't know what the future holds exactly, but I do think some layer of interactivity will be expected across all media.
Or at least like references from IPs that they're familiar with that came initially from Roblox, but now they're seeing it on a linear format, like on the BBC and other broadcasters. Because I think the references that we have today, I think, are quite different. So that they probably are expecting initially to play the game, as you say, James, and then that to be made into a movie or like a series or something like that, where we might have been used us in the past to have the Marvel comic books or the book itself becoming a film or a show. Their references are going to be quite different. And you're right in the sense that it might become as well a test field for a lot of broadcaster, because launching a new show, you never know how it's going to land. As you mentioned, it's a lot of expense initially to put up front. While you can already have almost like a mini group tests within those platforms to see how the concept lands, whether this is entertaining or whether this is something that lands specifically with that audience that we know is notoriously a little bit different to the ones that are consuming current linear TV. So that's quite interesting, as well as how Roblox will be used by broadcaster as a way to launch new, like a standing point essentially, that before they launch a project on a broadcast, they'll have to like have their Roblox test to make sure that has been approved or well received. I'm quite curious, James, because the BBC is obviously a legacy brand, and it might seems a little bit foreign for, well, to see it in a space like Fortnite and Roblox. So I wonder what was, I guess, your internal roadblocks, or were there any? Like I'm conscious that there's a lot of brands or people that we spoke on the podcast. There's almost two challenges. One is the internal one, to be able to land and move those projects forward, not knowing what team do you have to have involved. And then the other one is actually having the audience relate to your brand in their space. So I'd love to understand, what was that process for you?
I think, as I said before, actually the BBC is like, it's a conservative company. It's a company that's been going for a long time, but it's also like a very sort of forward-looking company. So, and also it's very audience driven. So if you can make a case that this will serve an audience, and it's an audience that's hard to reach, and there's huge, sort of focus on reaching our audience as the BBC. And so actually our experience in these projects have just been sort of like huge amounts of excitement. And I think that's kind of like, when you look across the industry, you talk to other people, like the fact that it's starting to become the norm a bit, and you sort of go like, well, why wouldn't you want a video game? And all these people are sort of creative people, like, people who make the shows. And sort of, I think the other thing to to say is like, all the projects sort of I've worked on always worked in hand with the production companies and the IP owners themselves. And actually, you can almost immediately tell, like, it's always almost the first meeting, I would say, with most companies, of like, are they in or are they out? It's sort of like, and as soon as what they're doing, actually, it's sort of like, there's always sort of challenges to be worked through around IP ownership. And, I know far more about sort of IP ownership in the metaverse than I ever thought I would. Uh, but it's all kind of achievable. And also the fact that you can move at pace. I think that's the really big thing for me with like Fortnite and Roblox, that you can sort of provide a proof of concept to your CEO, or I know, and yeah, Nick, I'm sure does this all the time. That suddenly it's amazing how you can go to a pitch now and you can basically show someone this is what your world could look like, and suddenly everyone's like excited. So I think that's there's always sort of challenges around sort of like compliance, child safety. Like those are kind of like really important things that you can't get wrong, and you have to sort of approach with like real caution as a brand. But also like they are sort of surmountable, and you can provide like an amazing experience for like young people and users, which I think is just super exciting. So I would love to say like it was sort of incredibly tough, but backed by the amazing people like I said, like Yona Campbell and Marielle Trisciotto, who's like the head of digital and the control of youth audience at the BBC. Like it sort of all sailed through.
I totally agree. I mean, I think like as creatives, that have been used to telling stories in a linear fashion, the second that you can build that into a 3D environment that's immersive and persistent, I think most creatives are like, yes, give me more of that. Let's do that challenge. But I'm curious to get your point of view, James, because like, how do you measure success, and what are the KPIs? How is that different than in traditional broadcast linear? And how did you sell it up to your leadership that this was a success or not?
So I think like for most, I think we've sort of gotten to this very interesting world of these spaces at the moment. And I'm sort of talking just with you, but also like more broadly, is you kind of had this experience of proof of concept, I would say,
Hmm.
worlds where it was kind of like, oh, this is kind of cool. We built a video game. We've sort of reached a few people. This is sort of really neat. Like kind of see the future. Whereas actually all these businesses are businesses of scale. So, to take the BBC or ITV or any of the American broadcasters, they think in millions, they think in tens of millions.
Hmm.
So if you go, oh, great, I reached 10,000 people, like it's a real sort of collective shrug hits. Everyone goes, it was exciting, but like, how are you going to reach millions? Like, that's always kind of the question. So the most obvious things, I always think like, actual reach, like how many people are playing your game. For the BBC, UK reach is king. But also then it comes up demographics, and like I think a lot about, and I think a lot of brands do, and it's kind of something we worked really hard on. I'd always advise brands to focus on is actually you need to work harder to acquire younger customers. Like they're really hard to reach audiences. It's not as simple as kind of just sort of like, paying for a bit of TV media. You have to work much, much harder, much savvier audience. So again, it's kind of within the information sort of battleground and attention battleground, actually time spent is really important as well, I think. So one of the big things that you see in these sort of like immersive world spaces is pretty normal to, if your game hasn't flopped totally, to get between, get like 12-10 minutes of playtime. Like people would kill to have that on TikTok. Like, if you can get 15 seconds on TikTok, like literally zero point 0.1 second is a view. And I love TikTok, don't get me wrong, it's amazing. It's a really powerful platform and highly engaged platform. But actually the depth you can get into these. So, and the fact everyone's young. So, it's kind of remarkable when we sort of look at analytics across the different experiences and everyone's under 24. Like, that's almost unthinkable to do for a TV show. Like, you will still get a young skewing TV show, but you'll rarely get it kind of like 90% sort of 16 to 34-year-olds. Whereas like on Fortnite and Roblox, it's almost entirely that. So it's sort of like it's almost sort of playing into the platform strengths. There's kind of like, those are the big metrics we would look at. And obviously the other thing is like, the space is still evolving. So I think the thing that all brands would like is sort of a more sort of robust and systemized kind of type of metric. Like, it'd be great to get to the point where we're sort of like Nielsen, and we can kind of say one play here is worth another play here. But equally, I've worked in social media for a very long time. It's one of the other things I work across at the moment. We don't have a particularly systemized way of sort of like measuring views across different accounts. All the companies measure them differently. So it's kind of like, it's kind of the holy grail. Whether we'll ever get to it, I don't know. But what we do know, the stuff we can measure is valuable.
Yeah, because I think the difficulty is the same as, putting a brand into a game. Making a game into a film is also quite difficult. Like we've seen some of the difficulty that Minecraft had. I can't imagine what would Grow a Garden or an Italian Brainwash film. Well, maybe Italian Brainwash is a little bit easier because there's character, but a Grow a Garden, I just wonder what kind of film that would be like, and the
Like, what's the
difficulty.
backstory?
Yeah, what's the backstory? And I guess it was the same for Minecraft. There was no backstory, and they kind of had to, like, they had the world, but they had to invent the story.
Yeah. I've always been quite bullish on the Minecraft movie. I always thought, actually, I know this is like way too late in the day to claim that, but, and yeah, had no bearing on success. But, you had such a beloved IP for that, and you had such a long audience for it. Like, you've had people playing that game for decades. So that always felt like people would come out for that. But also, I think they managed to find like all the elements to make it into a great movie. And the
Mhm.
question is like, it's really hard to make a hit TV show, even if you start from the ground up, even if you have an amazing IP, even if you have amazing
Yeah.
characters, that you kind of have to rely on actually all the creative forces in the world coming together, and also kind of like just hoping it hits the zeitgeist. And it's impossible to predict. And most TV companies, you know, will have more shows that don't become a hit than do become a hit. So I think that's what we'll have to sort of see is like companies take quite a bullish kind of route to it. Sort of
Yeah.
like, can you get the biggest IPs off these spaces to give you a chance? But also, you're going to have to take a few swings at it, I suspect. But the good news is kind of you've got these pre-developed characters and a fan base already. So I think
Yes.
was where we'll see the next things come from.
Yeah, it does seem inevitable, but a good point. Like right now, the audiences are small. So it's tricky when brands are looking to activate and get big numbers in these activations. You can't really get it in some of these emerging technologies, but eventually these emerging technologies will become the mainstream.
We
So that's where the innovation space is right now.
And also, I think it's the same if you're a brand thinking, how do I justify this? It's not just about people using the devices, using the content, it's people talking about it and sort of
That's right. Yeah.
repositioning itself as more progressive. But also, it's the same as sort of thinking about gaming. Like, gaming is not just about people playing your game, it's about all the people making YouTube videos about it.
Around
And
it. Yeah.
sort of you can kind of really justify that, and you can also bring sponsorships in, or you can use it in sort of super premium ways. There's like lots of ways I think that are going. I also think you're seeing sort of really interesting things. Like I saw this great demo, also about NASCAR doing, where you can hold your phone up and a NASCAR race. It will show you like the driver and the speed they're going at, like tag the
Yes.
car, and you're just like, well, this is like the future is here now. Like, why wouldn't you want to use that? And I think as those sort of things start to come into fruition, we're going to sort of see the space move so quickly.
Yeah. And you're right. I think it's to position your brand as culturally relevant. Like I got served on my For You page. It was Streaking Condensed that did a Minecraft choreography recently. And again, it's just to show that a show like Strictly Come Dancing can be associated with a game like Minecraft for the show itself. And it's quite interesting to see how now all of these different pillars are like merging into one.
Yeah, and there's a quite apocryphal story that, I think a lot of people claimed to invent colour TV, but certainly one of the BBC's claims was that they sent colour cameras down to Wilden. As David Attenborough, who did it, is now a famous naturalist. Um, but they invented colour TV, and I think at the time everyone was like, well, why are you sending these really bulky, difficult cameras down to do this? And it's like, well, because without doing this step, you won't invent the next thing. And that next thing, if you're the person who invents that, or you're the person who's at the forefront of that, you have such an advantage over everyone else to position yourself as a dominant player. So, and I think the other thing is like the cost of these technologies is just dropping so rapidly. So, it's costing sort of like a tenth of what, a VR experience now costs a tenth of what it cost 3 years ago, which is kind of wild. And, working with the Vision Pro, they have worked with Blackmagic, and actually you've got this kind of 180 sort of field of view that actually follows a traditional post-production route, which is kind of actually quite groundbreaking. Like the post-production, I think, is one of the biggest parts of that, because actually it means that you don't need to send it out for spatial mapping, spatial audio, which is incredibly specialist. That normal TV companies like Livewire works on this, who are like really talented part of a Patrick group. And, it's someone who's a 2D editor editing it, which I think is remarkable actually. And sort of, again, something the unthinkable 3 years ago. So that democratization of tools will just speed up and make it easy to get into these spaces.
Yeah, you have no excuse. It's getting easier and easier. Innovation is clunky and challenging, but it's not impossible, and more people should embrace it.
Mm-mm.
But James, that was an amazing conversation. Thank you so
Yes.
much for joining us. And, also congrats for the new life changes that you're jumping into. We're super excited to see the impact that you make in this space.
I'm really excited to work with other organizations who want to do cool things.
Well, we're excited to see the impact
Yeah.
that you're going to make. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you so much, Dave.
Let's go
Sure.
back to the show.
Thank thank you so much again to James for coming onto the podcast. I think that was such an interesting interview. Really interesting to see how the BBC, that is such a legacy IP, is now leveraging all of those different touch points to be able to just, I think, be known to the UK audience. But what was your key takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, I love his perspective. I haven't had the chance to work with him yet, but we've sort of circled around projects for a while, and I think he's got a really smart viewpoint about how you can take legacy media and leverage new platforms to kind of make it more relevant and more additive. I mean, this whole concept of it being a companion piece, it's
That's
like an
right.
additional touch point to IP that's happening in a linear fashion. He gets it, and I'm always appreciate his points of view.
Absolutely. But now let's go on to the hit, miss, and bets.
Boom.
So it's me this week, and I did already have a little spoiler, but my hit was the Duolingo anime, and it's something just because it's something that I've called. I feel like I'm on a roll, but I think a few months back now, I've called that my bet was going to be that we'll see more brands doing long form content and leverage different entertainment, sorry, media to express their brand. So I talk like we're gonna see more example like L'Oreal has done, like Formula One has done, or what Guinness has done now. And we're seeing now Duolingo and Gap essentially utilizing longer form and different kind of content to be able to express their brand. So I just thought that was like really smart from Duolingo. I did see also, just to add to what you were saying before, but this Densu, who we'll speak to soon, actually did a research on anime and the popularity of anime amongst Gen Z. So they've done a research that came out June this year, and they was found out that 50% of Gen Z that were interviewed by for their research watches anime on a weekly basis. So again, it's another point of finding the type of content fandom that those younger audiences have to be able to attach your brand to it. So that was my hit. Miss is YouTube ads. I don't know what is happening, but I am bombarded. Like, this is worse than linear TV. I have to go, just to go through like a 5 minutes video, I have to engage with like 3 to 4 different ads. And my issue is like, there's two issues. One is the same ad. So I'm so fed up with seeing the same ad over and over. It hasn't changed in like a week. I'm seeing the same ad. It's the same bloody ad. So I'm already like having so much hate almost towards the brand because I'm getting the same ad. But I get it. Anyway, last thing is bets. It's a bit of a reference to the panel that we discussed about Adweek, but I think that we are going to see actually less and less of those really big global campaigns and more actually brands targeting very niche audiences, very micro influencers, or even micro communities in order to advertise or just have a conversation around their product, and potentially like seeing how AI and the way that you can maybe like more easily create content at scale but customizable being part of actually that bonus of it. So that's my bet.
I agree with you. I think the watch out there is the slop. And I think that
I
it's
agree.
easier said than done.
It's not to have everything made by AI and it feels like impersonal. It's more, how do you utilize it as a way to like scale and like adapt the
Right.
content more
And make it
easily.
relevant
But
to
I wouldn't exactly, especially
multiple
if you're gonna
versions.
go. That's right.
Yeah, great point. Fully agree. But that's a wrap on this episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for James for joining us. What do you got?
And for next week, we're very excited to speak to Magali Huot, SVP of Global Gaming Strategy at Dentsu.
That's it. Edward, please read us out.
And that was Brands in Play. Thank you for joining the podcast where we explore immersive marketing and the people who are leading it. Co-hosted by Albane, Prioux and Nick Hill. Our show today was produced by myself, Evan Regu, with creative direction by Joey Jerder and Javed Kazmi, and audio engineering by Somran Kiyu, as well as a massive shout out to Ben Caro. Be sure to join us every week for brand new episodes.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views, policies, or positions of host employers. The information shared during this podcast is based on personal experience and publicly available information and is intended for informational purposes only. Any references to specific platforms, companies, or partnerships are made in a personal capacity and do not imply endorsement, partnership,